This is From Both Sides, a spontaneous, free-flowing conversation featuring a dynamic team of women, providing insights into both political and civic events affecting the lives of women throughout Pennsylvania. And now, here's your host.
Hello, and welcome to another edition of From Both Sides. I'm Michelle Saletto, your host. Today, our show, The Supreme Journey, will introduce you to 4 women who are seeking election to be justices on the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, the highest court in Pennsylvania. And while we hope to give you some insight today about the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania, more importantly, we hope to share with you the journey that these women have undertaken from the time that they were young girls, the kind of things that influenced their lives, the kind of people that supported them, and how did they get from growing up to seeking the highest court in the state of Pennsylvania. And joining me today is my guest co-host. She is the former chair of the Republican Committee of Lancaster County, my friend, Anne Womble.
It's wonderful to be here. I've been looking forward to this show for a long time.
Well, we have a very impressive lineup today.
And indeed, we do.
Yes, we do. So let's get started.
Well, it's my pleasure to introduce 2 of the judges who are with us today, both of whom are endorsed by the Republican Party of Pennsylvania. First, I'll start with introducing Superior Court Judge Judith Olson. Judy's from Pittsburgh, and prior to being elected to the Superior Court in 2009, she was a Court of Common Pleas judge in Allegheny County and in private practice before that.
Yes.
Welcome, Judge.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. It's good to have you. Also on the Republican side is Commonwealth Court Judge Anne Covey. Anne is from Bucks County, was elected to the Commonwealth Court in 2011 to a 10-year term. And prior to her election to the Commonwealth Court, she was in private practice and also served on the Pennsylvania Labor Relations Board. Judge, it's good to have you.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
And now I'd like to introduce the Democratic candidates. First, Christine Donahue. Christine is currently on the Superior Court of Pennsylvania, elected in 2007. Prior to Superior Court, you were a trial attorney and highly recommended by the Pennsylvania Bar Association, their highest recommendation, and you hail from Allegheny County.
I do.
Okay.
And it's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us. The Honorable Anne Lazarus. Anne is also a Superior Court judge. She was elected in 2009 and hails from Philadelphia.
I do.
Prior to being on the Superior Court, you were on the Common Pleas Court in Philadelphia for about 18 years?
19.
19 years. And whose county you're having so much fun, right? And Anne is also highly recommended by the Pennsylvania Bar Association, their highest recommendation.
Thank you.
Well, thank you all
It's
for
great to
being
be
here. We are thrilled to have you here for this very important discussion. I'm a bit of a historian myself, so I find it fascinating. Now, you probably all know this, but
We'll see.
but the Pennsylvania Supreme Court was the first state court in the nation, established in 1722. I was amazed to learn that. I didn't know that. And subsequently, the Superior Court was set up in 1895 to help take the load off of the Supreme Court. And then lastly, the Commonwealth Court was established in 1968 to also help, and we can talk later about the jurisdictions of each of the courts. We have 7 members of the Supreme Court, the office to which you are all seeking. There are going to be 3 vacancies, so on May the 19th, voters will be voting for 3, we'll be voting not for 3.
3 on each side.
Yeah, that's right, 3 on each
Parties,
side. But I guess where I'm going with this is the last time we could find that there were 3 vacancies on the Supreme Court was sometime in the 18th century.
1788.
There you go,
And they
1788.
were appointed at that point in time as
Okay.
opposed to elected.
Okay,
Right.
great.
Right.
That's when the court was expanded from 4 to 7.
Okay, so at that time, at that time. Well, the other, I think, interesting fact for viewers is that if 3 of the 4 of you are elected, you will join 1 other woman on the Supreme Court, and there will be 4 out of 7 women as justices on the Pennsylvania Supreme Court for the first time in the history of the court.
Correct.
That's
correct.
correct? Yeah. So I think we have a history-making opportunity, and we have some history-making guests. So welcome. Let me start off the discussion by asking each of you, what were you like as a little girl? What was your growing up like? What was your education, your influencers? when you were a little girl, did you just wake up one day and say, I really want to be a Supreme Court Justice? So what happened in your youth? Tell us. When I grew up, certainly, we tended, the women I grew up with, young girls that I was friends with, we tended to think of teacher, nurse, housewife. So I'm just interested a little bit about your early journey of growing up and what you were exposed to.
Okay, I'll start, if that's okay. Well, when you refer to it as a supreme journey, that just sort of made me chuckle because it certainly didn't seem that way at that point in time. I actually, I grew up in the anthracite coal regions of Pennsylvania, and my dad was a coal miner, and my mom was a seamstress in a dress factory. I didn't develop my thoughts about going to law school until much later on in my educational career. As a little girl, I was the only little girl in my neighborhood. So all of the kids that I played with were little boys. So, you know, I would have scraped knees and scraped elbows and things of that nature. And I went to a parochial grade school and a Catholic high school. And during this entire point in time, my only goal really was to go to college, because I would be and was the first person in my family to go to college. So my career goal was much more circumscribed. It was to go to college and be a professional person when I came out at the other end of it. And so I went to East Stroudsburg State College, which is really the story of a lot of people who I grew up with in the anthracite coal regions and the Lehigh Valley. And it was really the political science professors at East Stroudsburg who got me on this track of thinking not only of politics, but the role of the legal system in the development of our country and other countries. And that was really sort of the genesis of my thought about going to law school. I moved to central Pennsylvania, worked in Lewisburg at a regional planning and development group, which was very politically attuned. And so I spent a couple of years there, and that's when I decided that law school was really the right path for me.
So that was kind of a longer
It truly
journey.
was. It truly was.
I've been wanting to be a lawyer since I was in 8th grade. I read all of F. Lee Bailey's books. I wanted to practice criminal law. I did everything I could to take any kind of legal-related course. I had a personal law course in high school. And then in college, I took criminal law and constitutional law. I took constitutional law also in high school. I was very fortunate to have those kind of programs. And then when I was in college, I majored in political science, history, and criminal justice. I thought I was going to practice criminal law, so I went to Sicily to learn the criminal justice system, or the lack thereof.
Oh, wow.
And then when I got into law school, I wanted to go and study abroad and where the common law originated from. And so I went to University of Cambridge to study the common law. And I just kept pursuing this path, and I knew I wanted to be a judge at some point, and my ultimate goal was to be the first female U.S. Supreme Court justice. But Sandra Day O'Connor was a little bit older than me,
So you gave up.
she got there first.
So, Anne, were any of your family members lawyers, or did
No.
you get that first? You don't know. It just
No, my father was a chemical engineer, and my mother was a stay-at-home mom, and then she went back to work when I was in college and to work with my father. And I just had this desire. I loved what the law had to offer and the thought process, and it allowed you to be independent. And I guess my father said, and my mother, that, you know, it doesn't matter whether you're a male or you're a female. All of our children are going to have the opportunity to go to college, and you can be whatever you want to be. And you have the ability and the confidence so long as you work hard and you're true to your moral fabric of society. And so
very forward thinking, though, for the time.
Oh, yeah. No, absolutely. And just kind of generated from there. And I was also the first female member appointed to the Pennsylvania Labor Relations Board since 1937. So I think we need to continue to support women and let them know that doors and the windows are wide open. So thanks for having this program today.
Well, I went about it very differently. I was an only child, and my father was a physician, and he said to me from the time that I could read that you're going to be some type of professional. He didn't care whether I was going to be a professor or a lawyer or a doctor. He preferred doctor because that's what he was. And he wanted me to get through school as early as I could get through school. And I skipped a couple of grades when I was in lower school. And I got to college and I said, okay, Dad, you want me to go to medical school? I'll take pre-med. And organic chemistry and I just did not see eye to eye. But as part of the pre-med program, I worked in a So I volunteered with a group of young individuals who were mentally challenged. And I had the unfortunate opportunity to work with the last person to get a lobotomy in this country. And I felt that if that young man had had legal representation that was better, it would not have happened. And I came back to my parents and I said, you know, I think I really want to go to law school. So I applied. But I graduated in December of that year in school. And I worked for the next 8 months bringing sailboats up from the British Virgin Islands to Connecticut. And I was crew.
Oh, my.
And
you still went to law school.
and I wrote back to my dad saying, I don't know if law school is really for me. And then I got an opportunity to work on an America's Cup boat. And I did that. And then I said, I really don't know. But then August came along and I decided, okay, I'm going to go to law school because we went through a couple of hurricanes and that wasn't a lot of fun.
Being a sailor was
Not full time. And I ended up in law school. And I remember coming to Temple to go to law school. And I was under 21 when I started. And you couldn't get a drink in Pennsylvania. And so you I couldn't do anything with any of my friends in law school for the longest time. And then I went to law school, and then that they say is history. I actually met my husband in law school, and I stayed and made a career out of law.
I guess mine is more in line with Anne's. We had to write a paper in 5th grade, and the paper was, what do you want to be when you grow up? And as you indicated, most of the girls back then were going to be nurses or teachers. And I wrote that I wanted to be a trial lawyer. And I have no idea where that came from. It was just a calling. I have no lawyers in the family. I never watched Perry Mason. I knew nothing about it. There was something about it. I just knew that it would be a wonderful opportunity to represent people, protect their rights, protect their liberties. I thought this would be a great job. And my parents were very supportive. They certainly didn't expect it. Where did that come from? My father was first-generation American and first to go to school and was just a business person, not in the legal profession. My mother went back when we were older to become a nurse, so it just sort of came out of nowhere. But it was something that was in my life going forward. So I geared everything that I did to going to law school to become a trial lawyer. Though there was that period where I was going to go to Broadway and be an actress. So I minored in theater, and I had a director say to me, if you want to become an actress and go to Broadway, you have to accept 2 things. The first is rejection. Well, I could accept rejection. I thought, that's no problem. I can do that. And he said, and the second, cockroaches. That did it. I said, nope, no cockroaches. Even as a trial lawyer, you're used to rejection. You're used to having difficulties. So I put aside the plan to go to Broadway and focus strictly on going to law school and becoming a trial lawyer. And certainly the background of an actress plays very well with being a trial lawyer, because you do have to impart a story to the fact finder. And so I found that it fit very nicely together, and that was my path to at least getting to law school.
Could any of you tell us, 3 of you are colleagues on the same court,
Yes,
we are.
Superior Court together. What is it like, a typical day in the life of a statewide judge?
It's great for us on the Superior Court. We can disagree with each other in terms of our decisions and never be disagreeable.
Yeah.
I'd say all 15 of us are very friendly. We're very collegial. We respect each other's abilities. But an average day, you sit in your chambers with the people that you've hired as your law clerks and your secretary, and you just read and read and read. I never needed reading glasses before I got on this court. and you read, we're each of us on the Superior Court at least is responsible for originating about 300 opinions a year. We're the busiest appellate court of the country.
Okay.
So last year we did 8,200 opinions.
Yeah.
So we are busy, and in addition to the 300 opinions that we write, we have to read and object to or concur with 600 other opinions that our colleagues write,
Yeah.
aside from sitting on the court.
Okay, on that note, we're going to just take a break for a moment and hear from our sponsors, and we'll be right back.
From Both Sides is a production of the Susquehanna Valley Center for Public Policy and is made possible by the support of the Pennsylvania Center for Women in Politics at Chatham University, a nonpartisan center devoted to fostering women's public leadership through education, empowerment, and action. The first to focus on women's political involvement in Pennsylvania, the center integrates disciplinary knowledge, civic education, and capacity building, while examining the intersection of women and public policy. From Both Sides is also supported as a public service by Saul Ewing LLP, a law firm with a 100-year tradition of serving the needs of business, government, education, healthcare, technology, and manufacturing in our region. And by the University Center for International Studies, the engine for extending the global reach of the University of Pittsburgh and its students.
Hello and welcome back to From Both Sides. We're here with 4 candidates for the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania, and we were just talking about kind of what was the day in the life of a judge like, and we heard from the Superior Court, and now we're going to ask Anne to tell us a little bit about what your day's like in the Commonwealth Court.
We have a lot of briefs to read, and we do a lot of writing with opinions. We read every case that circulates through our court, and we vote on every opinion before it goes out the door. Unlike Superior Court, we have original jurisdiction in limited matters, so we're always on call. So we all have chambers in Harrisburg, so we may hear anything from we had the voter ID case, we had the Corman versus NCAA case with the $60 million and the Endowment Act as a result of the Sandusky matter. And then we also travel around the state as far as hearing oral arguments similar to the Superior Court. And then every judge has duty week every year. So we have to always be on to answer any emergent matters that may come through the door.
And can we just have someone clarify the exact jurisdiction of the Supreme Court? And then one of you respond to the jurisdiction of the Superior Court.
The Superior Court has general broad jurisdiction. So when someone goes to the courts of common pleas, the various trial courts throughout the state, if they lose at that level, they have an automatic right of appeal in most cases to the Superior Court. So we have a very broad jurisdiction. We hear all of the appeals in the criminal cases except for death penalty, which go directly to the Supreme Court, the family law cases, the juvenile cases, all of the civil cases except those that are specialized for the Commonwealth Court. So it has the broadest jurisdiction of the types of cases that ultimately make their way up to the Supreme Court.
The Pennsylvania Constitution actually guarantees the right to appeal to the Superior Court. And that's why we have so many cases filed every year.
Right.
So, as Judy pointed out, the breadth of our jurisdiction is massive, from juvenile to custody, orphans courts, adoptions.
And then tell us then, what does the Supreme Court hear?
Unlike our court, picks and chooses the cases that it wants to hear. It used to be called aliquot, or now they call it, you have to petition for allowance of appeal. And generally speaking, the Supreme Court is by definition going to only take those cases that have the broadest and deepest impact on the law in Pennsylvania. And ultimately, they hear appeals from our court in that fashion, and it's very narrow. About 96% of the cases that come from the Superior Court are the final word on those cases.
They took 147 cases to review.
And then they may not decide all of those.
And the Commonwealth Court is different. We're really the business court of the Commonwealth. So we hear all of the appeals coming up in the Commonwealth, the Common Pleas Court involving local government and everything involving regulation. So all the appeals from the regulatory agencies, whether it be labor relations, taxation, land use, zoning, workers' compensation, unemployment compensation. So it's very diverse in that area. And then anything involving the Commonwealth, if the Commonwealth is sued or the Commonwealth is suing another party, they have to come into our jurisdiction. That's in our original jurisdiction. And then similar to the Superior Court, then you can make a request to the Supreme Court to have your case heard on appeal.
Okay, great.
Well, it sounds like the workload might be being reduced for each of you if you.
Well,
doubt it.
they have a lot of other responsibilities, so they're very busy folks
Right.
as
You know,
well.
the Supreme Court also administers the entire judicial branch of government in Pennsylvania. So there's that entire other end of the
The
state
admin
the
end.
Supreme Court
Right.
deals with.
So you're not going to be sitting around with your
No,
feet
no,
up.
No, I don't think so.
absolutely not.
Right. Well, speaking of the Supreme Court, clearly some scandals have happened recently, and which has created this unprecedented, almost nearly unprecedented situation of having 3 open seats. How has that, and how did those stories affect each of your decision to then now jump into this race and run for Supreme Court this year?
We don't have any Commonwealth Court judge on the Supreme Court, and we are the business court of Pennsylvania, and we haven't had a Commonwealth Court judge on the Supreme Court for a long time. So when the opportunity existed that there were 3 openings and somebody came and said, hey, we'd like you to consider running so we can have representation for the business side of Pennsylvania and have the information available to all the other justices.
There's no question that the scandals that have hit our judiciary has significantly eroded the citizens' faith in the judiciary. And that is a very important issue. And I think it was part of my thought process that once again we needed to make sure that we put people on the court that have the experience but also have the reputation of being honest and ethical and having integrity. And so I take that very, very seriously. And I tell folks when I go out and talk that the important thing is that they try to find out about these candidates and about their experiences, including their reputation for integrity. And it's important to look at what the Bar Association has done. They look not only at your qualifications, but your ethics. And like my other colleagues on the Superior Court, I was fortunate to be rated highly recommended, not only because of legal experience, but because of a reputation of being honest, ethical, and having integrity. And that is so important for our judiciary.
Because I think it comes from the top. If the Supreme Court justices act in a certain way that make people believe that the court is transparent and that the people that are operating in the court have honesty and integrity, that creates a whole standard for the rest of the judiciary.
Absolutely.
Yeah, there's no question. And, you know, the integrity of the Supreme Court, it should be unquestioned. I mean, the fact that we're having this discussion is frankly an embarrassment.
It's awful.
I mean, as a lawyer, I revere the law, and to this day do. And the notion of even bumping up against the line is anathema to me. And so the fact that we're unfortunately having this discussion is an embarrassment. And when people vote, they have to, it's about integrity. And it's hard because of the lack of information, which is nice that you people are doing precisely this. But people really do have to step back and think, is this somebody who I'm going to be able to trust in terms of their integrity?
Right.
Well, you know, when I was a lawyer, a brand new lawyer, our Supreme Court was the envy of the United States. And we had people on the court that were every bit as erudite and every bit as impressive as anyone on the Supreme Court, on the United States Supreme Court. We haven't had that to a certain degree. You know, there were people that when I became a lawyer, that people like Ben Jones and Justice Roberts and Justice Egan that really knew the law, and their opinions were quoted all over the place.
Right.
Well, really quick before we close, should the justices of the Supreme Court and judges of the other courts be elected or appointed?
Elected, but there's a real problem because of Citizens United.
Elected because when you have to travel around the state, you understand what the people need, what their interests are, how diverse this state is, and a merit selection is no different than somebody in the back room appointing the judges.
Elected, because it's a far more transparent way of selecting justices than an appointive process.
I think it's a coin toss. I think there are pros and cons for both systems, politics in both systems, but we have an elective process. It's a great process, and I'm very proud to be part of it.
Well, we are so grateful that all of you joined us today, because this is a history-making a table, I think.
It is.
Anne and I hope that when the 3 of you are elected, which 3 we we hope any 3 women are elected, and we hope to be there cheering you on and hoping that you're going to do great things for the Commonwealth. I just want to make sure that we say a special thanks to Anne for joining us, and I hope that 3 people at this table win. I'm at the point where I almost don't care if they're a D or an R. Ooh, that was hard to say. And I want to thank all the viewers for joining us today for this terrific group of guests. We hope you'll join us again, and we hope that you'll think, as we do, that despite the political differences we have as women in Pennsylvania, there's much more that unites us than divides us.
Hear, hear.
Thank you.
Hear, hear.
And
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you all very much.
From Both Sides is a production of the Susquehanna Valley Center for Public Policy and is made possible by the support of the Pennsylvania Center for Women and Politics at Chatham University, a nonpartisan center devoted to fostering women's public leadership through education, empowerment, and action. The first to focus on women's political involvement in Pennsylvania, the center integrates disciplinary knowledge, civic education, and capacity building, while examining the intersection of women and public policy. From Both Sides is also supported as a public service by Saul Ewing LLP, a law firm with a 100-year tradition of serving the needs of business, government, education, healthcare, technology, and manufacturing in our region. And by the University Center for International Studies, the engine for extending the global reach of the University of Pittsburgh and its students.